So you guys just saw, a few of the ways that we're, I think, stretching the boundary of what it means to collect and to display and to consume data. And, we're pretty excited about how the iHub can power some of these new types of apps and new types of devices and new use cases. And, a lot of that was based on the vision of our product team and our engineering team to really kind of rethink what's possible. And this next session is really about your own vision and about, ways to think about what's possible in terms of data and in terms of information, in terms of visualization, especially when we're looking at ways to build on, as Pete said, a lot of cases, the next big app is an app that you already have. So a lot of our environments, we need to build on top of those applications and reuse some of those tools and reuse our expertise. So building on that foundation and look at ways to be clever and to really supercharge our data so that it becomes more usable by more people. That's really what this next session is all about, to start looking at some strategies for, basically becoming more data-driven, number one, but also what's the role of data in context? What does that mean? What's the role of open source? And what are some of the elements from a design perspective that enables people to really start to put this all together and create experiences that not only drive the behavior of your consumers, your customers, but also drive the business. So that's really what I'm going to talk about for the first 20 minutes or so to sort of set the stage. And then I'm going to bring up our expert panel for the second half. And we're going to drill into some of their perspectives, some of their tips, and we'll probably end up with even some predictions in terms of, what are some themes and things that we think are going to happen in the market next year and beyond in terms of bringing this all together. So like Pete did, I wanted to talk a little bit about the backdrop, right? So data is clearly changing a lot of things, right? It's all around us. It's informing the way that we think about our consumers, the way that we manage our businesses, the way that we even assemble applications and infrastructure. And I wanted to just sort of start with a sampler of a few different perspectives because at the end of the day, I'm going to talk a lot about the end consumer of this information and this data. And so from a customer relationship perspective, data is certainly changing a lot of things. I mean, if you think about our roles as individual consumers and the loyalty programs and the online offers and the ability to sort of put together this whole view of the consumer is pretty important and very much important going forward. So from a customer perspective or a customer management perspective, I like this quote at the top from One-to-One Media that really talks about the value of data is in providing relevance, right? And really, full stop, if you're a marketer, it's all about relevance. It's the difference between delighting a customer and annoying them. It's the difference between that form letter that Pete talked about or a personal note that says, we notice you've used these tools. We're going to be improving them in these ways. We'd love your feedback. It's the difference between spam that we receive or an alert that we receive that just happens to be delivered at the right time of day that's helpful, that's useful. So that's one perspective. Another one is, and I love this data point below that from McKinsey, which says that companies that use data and they put it at sort of the center of their decision making, whether it's from a sales and marketing perspective, they just happen to outperform other companies. So maybe this is obvious, but companies that embrace the role of data and they use it to inform what they do just do a particularly good job of getting ahead of the curve when it comes to new markets or new innovations or things like that. So data certainly is a game changer with respect to that business decision process as well as the way that we market. And in fact, the third data point is an example of a customer who's using the analytic engine within iHub to drive that same level of improvement. It's interesting to often contrast the industry study data. So McKinsey says as much of a 20% improvement when you put data at the center. We have a customer that's doing just that in terms of the improvement of response rates on their campaigns. So real results today with people who are putting this data sort of into practice. The next thing I want to just mention, this is related to some of the things that Pete also talked about in his opening, is the whole world of business intelligence and reporting is absolutely shifting to this focus on embedded. So if you look at the analyst reports, not only the Dresner study that we referenced, if you look at data coming out of Gartner, they're showing this big uptick in the percentage of analytic capabilities that are now embedded within business applications. As of next year, they expect as much as a quarter of that capability will be delivered in the frame of these other business applications. You also have sort of, and we got a hint of this with our IoT demo, that we're talking about powering and creating smarter and smarter applications that are fed by data from other smart applications and devices and things like that. And if you look at sort of the top level, this is a big deal, right? I mean, Forrester tends to look at these larger macro trends, and they're projecting that this whole kind of category of smart computing is going to become a big market. So we've got this sort of BI trend, we've got the general trend. And to me, the bottom line is, how can we start to embed information and intelligence at all different scales within the business, within specific applications, within workflows, and also within processes. And so the last data point that I wanted to finish with in this opening is, consistently, when you look at how businesses are looking to tap the power of data, whether it's big or small, the value comes from embedding data visualization, embedding analytics within business processes. And I think this is really important because it's a way to think about all the potential places we can be sort of injecting or supercharging this insight, but also how we can serve this up in a programmatic way. And again, back to the opening comments, this isn't necessarily a new thing that's going to sort of get dropped into the enterprise and cause a lot of disruption. It's rather extending and augmenting and improving existing processes, workflows, and things like that, which is exciting to me about embedded analytics. So I was going to go through 3 specific strategies that sort of work in concert, but they're each kind of unique because they go from sort of the outside view to the very much the inside view. So the first strategy that I have, and this, everybody should be thinking this way, is when I go back to my analyst days, my consulting days, is, first principle is, it's not about us, it's about our customers. So to me, the first key to becoming more data-driven is to look at the customer journey. And everybody's in different types of businesses, maybe it's B2B or B2C, but you have some sort of a customer journey where people interact with you maybe before they do business with you, during the journey to becoming a customer, after they become a customer, then how we interact with them as clients or as accounts, as they become repeat customers, as they become referrers to other companies. Really think about the role of the customer journey. If you are into things like journey mapping, and there's a lot of interesting exercises that, the CRM and CX people do. But start with that customer journey, then think about the types of functions or the types of tasks that they're doing that could be improved by data and information in context. So maybe it's opening an account, maybe it's checking on your account status, maybe it's comparison shopping, maybe it's looking at other types of personalized services. But to me, the foundation is to start with this customer view. And to start with the customer view, you have to really think about who this customer is. So if you have teenagers like I do, you know this consumer, right? You know that they're smarter than you in a lot of ways, or they think they are. They're increasingly demanding in terms of the time to get a result. The sort of digital generation expects instant answers, instant information, instant connectivity, instant everything. And they're connected, right? They're increasingly connected to each other. They're connected to brands. They view brands, if you look at some of the social data, in some ways they view brands even in a more favorable light than they do their friends, given the relationships that they can have on channels like Facebook. So they're connected in new ways. And so back to some of the demonstrations, this really is a mobile-first kind of social world, and it requires tools and infrastructure that recognizes that these relationships are happening in new ways on new channels. Specifically, if you look at this sort of new consumer from the lens of information design, because that's the business that we're in, right? We're in the business of designing information experiences and delivering that in the frame of applications and experiences. There's really sort of 3 ways that I think about the goals from a design perspective. And again, this is still a little bit big picture, but I think it's a good way to think about what our objective is. So those goals are as follow. We need to inform people, and that's sort of the baseline. We need to deliver useful stuff. We need to then connect with our consumers, and then we need to ultimately motivate them to do something. And so I'm going to drill into each one of those ideas in the next couple of slides. But if we just sort of clear our sheet, if we set out to inform and then to connect and then to motivate, we're going to actually do a pretty good job of connecting that information to the right stage of the customer journey. And ultimately, whether we're trying to sell more product, whether we're trying to get customers to become more loyal, it's about motivating to take an action, make that next order, to go and sign up for the next service, to double down and put more investment dollars in your account. It's all about motivating people to take action. Just like the smartwatch example, that alert is to get somebody to take an action. I'm going to investigate what's happening here, and maybe I need to go and check on, that vehicle in my fleet that seems to be always exceeding the speed limit in a certain section of road. So to me, informing is the baseline again for information design. It's where design starts. It's where visuals come into the equation. So, the headline for this slide is, at a minimum, we need to think about how visuals can sort of support this customer journey. I mean, we all know about how, a picture is worth 1,000 words, online and in mobile. A picture, a visual, an infographic is often worth thousands of data points. So visuals make it easier for people to consume information, to share it, to understand. But first principles to me is, if you're going to go down this path, we need to be helpful and provide useful stuff, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in customer service, whether you're in the enterprise. If we're useful, people will start down this journey with us. And increasingly, it means that we need to be thinking about how we can deliver this information in the format that people want, in a format that's shareable, and also we need to think about informing people, again, whether they're inside the organization or outside the organization. So informing is really important. Number two, we need to connect with where people are. So this whole idea of kind of mobile first, I don't know if anybody has seen this picture before. It's used around the web to describe this scenario. This is actually a campaign that Tesco ran in Korea, where it's QR codes, it's a mobile app, it's a multi-channel shopping application. It's delivering information in context of, commuters' daily journey. That's not a convenience store, that's actually a billboard. And there's QR codes on all those items, and people on the way into work, as they're in the subway, can scan their purchases, and then it goes into their mobile app and their profile. The data is all connected up, and then they get their groceries in their apartment when they get home. To me, it's an example of delivering information and experiences in the context of how people are doing sort of their daily life. And it's not intrusive, right? This is opt-in. It's not like this product's being pushed at you, but if you're in the market for, looks like a soft drink there, it's just a natural way that you're going about doing your daily commute, and information and data and contextual content is feeding this journey. So it's a real neat example of connecting to where people are in that journey. We can also think of sort of a different dimension of connecting, where consumers are becoming more loyal. They're getting to know you because you're connecting with them with personalized information. It's not just that form letter that Pete talked about, but it's rather letting the consumer know that you understand their relationship with you, not to spam them, but rather to see if you can improve different aspects of that relationship. So it's on this side of being creepy, but it's understanding the context and it's understanding the history and presenting that in a smart way. So connecting to me is really essential, not just from a mobile perspective, but also from a behavioral perspective. And then finally, motivating. So if you think about the role of information design and information in context, whether it's a simple sparkline, whether it's an embedded chart, whether it's an alert that pops up on your smartphone, we should be thinking about data in the context of driving behavior. And so ultimately, what behavior are we trying to drive? Are we trying to get people to double down and purchase more product for us? Are we trying to get them to be self-sufficient and learn about an item so that they don't call you as much? Data in context drives behavior. And this example, I don't know if there's any fans of Kayak in the room. People use Kayak to, interestingly enough, I never book anything on Kayak, but I always check the when to buy tool. So it works. They've motivated me to go to Kayak, but they've never motivated me to buy anything from Kayak. But it's a perfect example, if you're familiar with this, right? There's a great example of embedded analytics here. There's a little price trend. You can pop up that chart, and then it provides a very simple instruction. advice, you can sort of see it, I've popped it up, advice buy, and then hidden behind that overlay is there's a confidence. So it takes literally billions of data points, it distills it down, it's based on the transactional history and seasonality and whether other people are purchasing, and it gives you two things. It says either buy or wait, and then it gives you a confidence factor. So this is a great example of taking data, turning it into information, creating intelligence for that consumer at that stage of the journey, and then breaking it down into something as simple as buy now or wait. So I think this is sort of at least just a high-level framework to think about information in context, information design, and if we set out to at least do these three things, can I be helpful? Can I connect to people in new ways, maybe where they don't expect me to be connecting with them? And then can I ultimately motivate them to get to know me better as a company or as a brand or as a provider? We can do some pretty cool things. Strategy number two. So I'm going to flip this around. If the first strategy was about the customer, right, their journey, it's got to be about them. You have to create value. The second strategy is really about the business and the infrastructure and what do we need to do and have at the ready to serve that consumer. And so, we've got data all around us. We've talked about it so far this morning, but increasingly it's hard to sort of steer it towards something that's useful. So the dimension of scale is really important. And when I think about scale, it's the scale in terms of lots of users and lots of data and lots of devices and lots of choices and lots of countries and lots of languages. It's all that scale. But it's also the scale of scaling down to that one consumer with that smartwatch. So we need to think about scale not just in terms of enterprise grade stuff that makes this all work, right? That's Actuate's business, doing things at that scale. But it's also, can we scale it down so every consumer who's experiencing that dashboard or that alert or that visual feels like it was made just for them. And that's sort of the, Actuate's talked about the notion of personalized analytics. It's that portion of scale. So there's the big part of scale, and then there's the small part of scale, which is this experience seems like it was made just for me, or this piece of data or this chart was just for me. So let me explore this a little bit more. So if we go back to the theme of the event in terms of data-driven apps, right? There's at least these dimensions in play. The users that we have clients with millions and millions of users that are accessing applications that we're powering. We certainly are living in the world of big data, however we define it, whether it's the different types or the different varieties or the speeds and all the V's of big data. So we have lots of data. In a lot of cases, it's coming from different sources and it has to be kind of corralled into one place. Oh, by the way, this better be really secure because if you're like me, I'm on my third Chase visa in the last 6 months from different data breaches, which is really a pain, right? Because I have to, now at this point, I don't notify people. I just wait until I get the nasty calls saying your charges didn't go through from my health club and our alarm company and all that. So it better be secure. I'm actually, as an aside, I'm amazed that consumers aren't more pissed about all of the data breaches. We just sort of deal with it. That's a whole nother conversation. So at least we can do something about it, right? From the infrastructure side, we can make sure that our systems are secure and also personalized. So they scale up in terms of security and they scale down in terms of personalization. Oh, by the way, it's got to be mobile and it's got to support all the different devices. And, as I said before, driving information to be useful, to connect it, and to motivate people, it better be visual and it better be interactive. So we kind of have a big problem on our hands here, but fortunately it's what we've been thinking about for 20 years. So we have some pretty good ideas on how to deal with this. So I just wanted to provide a sample for what types of apps fit this profile because some of them don't, right? I mean, simple web applications, simple mobile applications, these are things that maybe other people do really well. Our sweet spot is in this blue circle. So these are the types of applications that fit that profile, right? They're, lots of users, lots of data, and the need to personalize that data for every user. So there's sort of this quintessential high scale plus low scale type applications. So these are the things that we think about a lot and that we work with, whether they're in financial services or whether they're in retail or in telecom. What's interesting, right, is as complexity grows on both of those dimensions, you have an increasing demand for three things: for, data access and manageability, for how do you sort of treat all that data, and then how do you ultimately deliver? What also is interesting is the more complex it becomes, and this is sort of one of my epiphanies over the last year, the more complex the situation becomes, the more you need to simplify it, right? You need to have more visual data when you have more not visual data. So the more data you have, the more that you need to visualize it, the more you need to embed it kind of in more places. So there's this kind of interesting lever that happens, that complexity tends to drive the need for simplicity. Maybe that kind of makes sense, but visualization and visuals tend to be that cure in a lot of ways. And oh, by the way, as we've talked about during our middle vignette in the demo, we can sort of work to capture and to process and deliver data, but if you're a consumer brand, if you're really focused on consumer style business, there's this other step. It's this analytic process that we talked about in our scenario where you're building your platform around something like the iHub, but also you may want to have this sort of modeling process that sort of is a pre-processing or an enrichment, as Mark talked about. So we have these two different flavors. Not everybody is doing that consumer style modeling, but increasingly a lot are. Which leads us to the third one. This is now getting into a little more around the developers and the designers and the creators. So if the first two strategies were kind of, customer outward facing things, the middle strategy was about sort of business enablement and infrastructure and what we need to think about. The third one is really, how are we driving the innovation that you've seen a little taste of on the stage here? And what's the role of open source in all this? So, for people who aren't that familiar with Actuate, we went down this path 10 years ago with the Eclipse BIRT project. And if you look at just all the very innovative, high growth, exciting companies that have jumped on that bandwagon, not because they want to be pure open source companies, but because they see the value in using a community like Eclipse to drive innovation, to drive scale, to create ubiquity. So in a lot of ways, what we're saying is, as we're going forward into this sort of new world of embedded analytics, as ever, we think that it's important to build around this kind of open source stack. So what's the state of BIRT right now, just as sort of a quick dashboard view, if you will? Pete mentioned a couple of these things. Obviously, we have a large growing community. We have an open source designer. We have a commercial designer. To me, one of the coolest things that we've done over the last year is the F-type, which allows that community and others to basically use the full enterprise iHub as a freemium product. And so if people haven't explored the session next door, or they haven't been kind of following what's up with F-type, this is basically an on-ramp for people who are looking to extend what they've done with the open source tools and have basically a reporting server that allows more interactivity and scheduling and things that you just can't do very easily if you're coding it yourself, and run in this mode where you can use this product and you're just simply limited by your output each day. And so this is exciting because it allows many new people to sort of get to know the iHub Foundation, but also you can think of all the business opportunities for partners of ours and for people who are using the product, since they now have an enterprise tool that they can use in this freemium fashion. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, and this is just a little sneak peek, just like we did with the demonstration, is to give a little glimpse into futures. So this is a simplified kind of marketing version of the product roadmap, but I wanted to just touch on the themes for how the company has evolved. So if 2013 was really about core developer productivity and enhancements that just makes it easier for developers, you could say that what we've done in 2014 is about ubiquity. It's the F-type, it's some of the enhancements in BIRT Analytics, it's enhancements coming up in 3.1. So the theme for the year really was about driving ubiquity and driving integration among these different tools and providing value for the community. If we look forward to 2015, at a high level, it's about extending this one step further with the notion of, people have been following what Forrester's writing about, this notion of low-code applications, more flexible assembly. So from a developer perspective, it's sort of the next level of development where things are automated, things are provided via libraries and templates and things like that, with the idea that at scale, you're going to have all the APIs you'll ever need. You're going to have more sort of sample applications, some of the things that we shared here on stage, which we just provide to the community so that you can build around those sample apps. The notion of white label support embedding sort of requires this, right? I mean, the idea of white label, meaning that you just don't know what technology is behind the scenes, but you know that you love that experience. That's what we have to provide to all of our customers, is they can power whatever they're doing with BIRT, but from the consumer perspective, it just looks like an awesome online banking app or an awesome telecom billing app or an awesome mobile app from their favorite consumer brand. So white label is really important when you talk about embedded. Clearly, we're going to do more in terms of wearables and start to package up some of these capabilities as toolkits and as extensions. And then if you look at sort of the combination of the analytic engine that we shared and the iHub, if you've played around with F-Type or if you haven't, you'll notice that there's a really interesting kind of front-end experience, what we call the 15-minute experience. We want that to be sort of more of the standard experience across all the products. So enhanced user experience and more big data connectors are also going to be some of the things that we're focusing on. So before I bring up our panelists, I just kind of wanted to tie these things together. So from a theme, again, it's about the customer journey. We really think that embedded analytics is all about accelerating this customer journey. You know, we're all in the customer business, whether we're directly serving them or whether we're just in a business. And we think analytics in context powers that customer journey. We also think that as a baseline, if you're a designer or developer or planner or an architect or a marketer, think about how you can inform that customer, how you can connect with them, and then ultimately how you motivate them. And that's how we're going to think about sort of our products coming together to create that ultimate experience.